Tavach, Tayede Yidden, dear brothers, Helike Yidden, and all those who are joining us live or virtually. Bruchim Habayim. Let's begin with blessing all of you and all of us. B'tech Klal Yisrael. Tichle Shana v'kileiseha, Tachel Shana b'rcheiseha, that this year, for all of you and all of your loved ones and all of us and all of our people, should be a year filled with abundant blessings, begashmis, beruchnis, Hashana Tova, Sukkah, a blessed and sweet year materially and spiritually. B'toiv hanira v'anigla, and all of your heart's desires should be fulfilled. Should be a year of true health and happiness, prosperity, nachas, transformation, and ultimately a year of complete victory and of true redemption. Amen. L'chaim, 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 l'chaim. This evening, I want to especially thank three individuals who dedicated this evening, the Pre-Selichos Farbrengen, dedicated first by our dear friends, David and Ida Schattenstein, in memory of my dear cousin, the unforgettable Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber Lipsker, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber Lipsker Bernard Belio Akiva, the founder and leader of the famous shul in Bell Harbor, Florida, and the founder of the Aleph Institute, and a extraordinary leader and spiritual guide for so many, who really built Yiddishkeit in Florida and passed away last year on the 5th day of Iyar, 5785. Leilu Nishmasi, and a loving memory of Rabbi Lipsker, Shalom Dov Beber, Nebelio Akiva. Tehei Nishmasi Tzrura, B'Tzrur HaChayim, and may his example and love and dedication always remain with us as an eternal source of inspiration and empowerment. And thank you, David and Ida, also dedicated by our dear friends Esther and Nachman Goodman in honor of their dear children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, with lots of love and all the abundant blessings. And thank you very much. And also dedicated by our dear friends of Rebbe and Rachel Spitz in honor of Chaim David, Ben Chayesara, for a complete and speedy recovery and Arichas Yamim V'Shanim Tovus. Amen v'Amen. Thank you very, very much. So, tonight, Jews all over the world, according to the customs of the Ashkenazim, will begin Selichos tonight. We soon say the famous piyut, B'Motzai Menucha. B'Motzai Menucha, Kidam Menucha, Techilo, Hatoz Nechamim Orim Yoshev Tehilo, L'Shmoya Al-Harino V'Yelat Tfilo, which the translation is B'Motzai Menucha, the night following Menucha, following the day of rest, serenity. We have come to you. In the beginning, we have come to you, Kidam Menucha Tchila, and please give us your ear from heaven, be able to listen to the praises and to the prayers. And this is, Selichos always begins, Motzai Shabbos, Motzai Menucha. And here, we come to a very powerful and fundamental, even transformative idea about this whole period of the year. This year, everybody knows, Selichos is very long. It continues, this week is not the week of Rosh Hashanah, it continues for a week plus almost a week and a half. Why is Selichos so long? Some years it's... The answer is because, according to the halacha, according to the tradition, Selichos needs to be minimum 4 days. And if Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, so you're good. You do Selichos Motzai Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday is Rosh Hashanah. But if Rosh Hashanah, like this year, is on a Tuesday, or Rosh Hashanah is on a Monday, it can be on a Sunday. But if Rosh Hashanah is on a Monday, is on a Tuesday, or on a Monday, it also can be on a Wednesday. So now, if you start Selichos Motzai Shabbos, you have only 2 days of Selichos, Sunday or Monday. Because Tuesday is already Rosh Hashanah. And Selichos, you need 4 days. So therefore, you start almost a week and a half earlier. So you have 4 days. Okay. Now, why do you need 4 days of Selichos? It would be 2 days of Selichos. Why 4 days? Yeah. This is brought in Shulchan Aruch, in the laws before Rosh Hashanah. Tavkuf Pei Aleph, or Cham Tav, this is brought from the Maril, the Ramah, a lot of the Poskim, that you need Selichos 4 days. But why? There's different explanations. There's a famous explanation of the Ateres Kenim and El Rebbe. They were from the great halachic authorities, and they said something very interesting. There's a halacha by the Karban Tamid and the Karban Pesach that you had to check out the lambs 4 days in advance for blemishes. It's called Bikur Mumim. Bikur Dalad Yamim Lemumim. You had a sheep. In the Beis HaMikdash there was a place called Lishkas Hatloyim, a chamber with a sheep. So 4 days before they offer the carbon, 4 days before, let's say it was a Thursday that they're going to offer this sheep. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they checked it for blemishes. They checked it one day, and then they checked it the next day because maybe there's another blemish. And the third day and the fourth day, and after 4 days, now you can go. This was also true with the Karban Pesach. That's why it says in Chumash you should take the lamb or the goat on the 10th day of Nisan and offer it on the 14th day. What do you need it on the 10th day? The answer is you check on number 10, Yud, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, then Yud Dalet you can offer it. So 4 days, and each day, the Maharal explains, if you didn't find one day, maybe you'll find the next day. So since it says in Yerushalmi, that by all the Karbonos it says V'kraftim, by Rosh Hashanah it says V'asisam, because Rosh Hashanah, you yourself are recreated as a Berech Hadasha, as an offering to Hashem, so you got to check yourself for blemishes 4 days. Because Rosh Hashanah it says V'asisam, you are the offering, so to speak. Adam ki yakriv mikem. So you need 4 days of checking. That's what Selichos. Selichos is an introspective journey to be able to examine the blemishes for 4 days. And then you could go to Rosh Hashanah. So if Rosh Hashanah is on a Tuesday or on a Monday, you don't got your 4 days. You only have 2 days. So therefore, we need 4 days. So Baruch Hashem, this year, we have not only 4 days, you have the next whole week, and then on a Sunday and a Monday. So we really, really get to check for all the blemishes and clean it out, etc. But now comes another question, right? So start Selichos next Thursday. Start Selichos next Thursday. So you have Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, we take a break. You have Sunday, Monday. Beautiful. The answer is the beginning of Selichos needs to be Motzei Shabbos. But why? Why? And that's why we say, B'motzei menucha kidam menucha tchila. It's not stam a date. It's essential. That's why this year we have so many days of Selichos, because it has to start Motzei Shabbos. And if you start next week Motzei Shabbos, you only have 2 days. And we need 4 days. So we start this Motzei Shabbos, so we have 6 days, plus another 2 days, so it's altogether 8 days. So this only transfers the question, why do you have to start Motzei Shabbos? Why can't Selichos start on a nice Thursday morning, on a Wednesday morning, on a Friday morning? I mean, why dafka Motzei Shabbos? Also, in the Piyut we say, B'motzei menucha kidam menucha tchila. The usual word that's used is Motzei Shabbos. B'motzei Shabbos kidam menuchot. Why b'motzei menucha? They focus on the idea of serenity. Logically, it's actually not so serene, because Selichos is not so associated with most people with menucha, right? Right away you begin, L'cha Hashem atzdaka v'lanu b'ishes apane. We're ashamed, ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu. Shabbos, on Fakert, Shabbos you don't say Selichos. Shabbos you're not allowed to say Selichos. Chazal say, ein eitzav ba. It's not a time for that type of prayer. It's not a time for Selichos. So first of all, why do you start Motzei Shabbos? Second of all, you're emphasizing Motzei Menucha as though it's connected to the serenity of Shabbos, when it's really a very different energy. It's a very different climate, a very different vibe, as they say today. Selichos and Shabbos, it's a different vibe. Nonetheless, we'd say Motzei Menucha and not Motzei Shabbos, dafka Motzei Menucha. So I want to share with you a very, very powerful insight that was once shared by the Lubavitcher Rebbe at a Farbrengen, Shabbos Selichos. Shabbos Selichos was Tovshin Chavches, 1968, the end of the year, Tovshin Chavches. And at the Farbrengen, Shabbos Selichos, the Shabbos before that Shabbos, the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave a very, very powerful, penetrating, and extremely inspiring and moving explanation. He elaborated at length. I just want to take out one point that I think could be very relevant and very helpful for all of us. He asked the question, who checks for the blemishes in the animal? You don't have the animal check its own blemishes. By definition, for somebody to check blemishes, you need somebody a little bit outside, objective, right? Somebody outside can look, can diagnose, because you have to have a little bit of a distance to be able to examine and say, this is a mum, this is a... We have in halacha, kol hanegayim adam raya chutz min nigei atzmoi. Right? All the blemishes, all the negayim, all the leprosies a person could look at, besides his own. Even if it's the best kohen in the world, he needs somebody else. So it's not just physically, but also emotionally. Everybody knows when it comes to my own blemishes, you can't see your own back. As brilliant and as great vision you have, nobody has ever seen their own back or scratched it. You need somebody else. There's certain parts of me, we have blind spots. My brother once told me that he was once talking to somebody about an issue he was having in his life. So he said, maybe you're having a blind spot. So he says, no, it's certain. He says, do you have blind spots? He says, yeah, but I know them. Right? Okay. So everybody understands that every person has negiyas. We have, it's called confirmation bias or other forms of bias. A person needs sometimes feedback from another human being who could see things clear. And that's why who examines the animal for the blemishes? Somebody who examines the animal, somebody outside. Here, who's examining me for my own blemishes? Me, myself. I'm saying slichus. You're not saying slichus for me, you're saying slichus for yourself. Yeah. It was once the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe was the Rebbe Maharash, Reb Shmuel, the son of the Tzemach Tzedek. They say when he was a child, he was davening in shul. And there was a Yid, an older chassid, who wanted to say al chet. And he wanted to clap nicely. So when you're holding a machzer, it's hard. So there was a child there, the Rebbe Maharash, Reb Shmuel was his name. So he put the machzer on him, because he was like leaning. He put it on his back to start saying his al chet. He turns around, he says, Allein zindigst du enough, mir klappst du? The sinning you did alone. Don't start clapping on me. Like, you sinned yourself, clap yourself, right? So I'm not doing slichus for you, you're not doing slichus for me. How can a person check his own blemishes? If it's the real idea. Like the Teres Kenim says, the Rabbi says, it's Bikr Dalad Mum, and by definition, somebody else needs to do it. Somebody else needs, which is why it's so important in life to have feedback from people closest to you and people around you, because they can give you sometimes a painful but an honest evaluation of things that are going on, at least something to reckon with. Or people who cannot listen to anybody's view outside of themselves, it's a very painful situation. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So that's the question. How could you be boidik your own woman? That's one issue. Another issue that Rebbe said is it's very possible for people to go into slichus, and there's a certain negative, depressing, melancholy, despondent. I can use more adjectives, but I'll keep it with that they can go into because of the nature of slichus. There's sometimes a heaviness that people go into. It's like, can't we skip this season and just go to either Sukkot or better even Hanukkah maybe, or just July 4th and let's get it. Once you're skipping, go after Pesach already. Let's get to the summer. So even though it's the calendar and it's a season and et cetera, but nonetheless, deep down, you start reading the slichus so much about my sins and atonement and how embarrassed I am, and I'm a klimoli busho chlima, and kaniyim v'dalim, zoichalim v'royadim, whatever, if you say slichus in English or you understand the Hebrew, it's intense language, very, very intense words. And a person could go into it from a negative place. So the Rebbe said that's why slichus always starts b'moitzoi menucha. It's not a technical detail. It follows the foundation of slichus is menucha. Moitzoi menucha. The foundation of slichus needs to be an internal serenity. What's the serenity from? What's the tranquility? Tranquility is the whole message of Shabbos. We say in Kegavon of Shabbos, v'chol dinin misabrim mino, lemeve echad be'echad. On Shabbos, everybody returns to their source. And in the source, you're completely one with Hashem. And you're not blemished. And you're sacred. And you're whole. And you're divine. Right? We say in the Kegavna, those who say the Kegavna, Nusach Svard. So what do we say over there? Everybody is crowned with a new fresh soul. The faces are radiant. The Gemara says in Beit on Shabbos you have a neshama yiseri, you have an extra neshama. Shabbos says oisi beini what do we say in davening? No. It's an intimate space of deep oneness. Yerushalmi says in Maseches Mai, "Afilu ha'ma'aretz ein meshaka b'Shabbos." Even people who lie, they're prone to lie a whole week. On Shabbos, they don't lie. I mean, if you really try, you could lie also on Shabbos. But naturally, the organic system of a Jew is Eina Meshaka b'Shabbos. That's the experience of Shabbos. On Shabbos, we have boider. We don't do boider. So the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya explains, boider is not just physically to select the good from the bad. It's also spiritually. It's not a time where you're involved in the enmeshment between the good and the evil because you're aligned with your source. The shayrish, the source, kivoy shavas, everything goes back to the source, aliyas ha'olamus. Once you experience this internal posture of Shabbos, now you can go into Selichos. And now you could check your blemishes. You know why? Because you're not your blemish. Shabbos, you experience that you are not your blemish. The blemish is almost something external to me. It's there, and I need to deal with it. But what's the foundation? The foundation is the experience of menucha. If not, I can go into Selichos thinking, I am the blemish. I am the sin. I am the problem. And when that's the baseline, the whole Selichos becomes distorted. And it's a very subtle thing. Because sometimes it feels like, of course, that's what religion is. Guilt, shame, I'm bad, I'm evil, God is going to punish me. When that's the baseline of Yiddishkeit, it's a depressing experience. And it has nothing to do with real Yiddishkeit. The baseline is, you're beautiful. Don't be completely enmeshed and entangled. Of course I have challenges. Of course I have flaws. Of course I have wounds. But the moment I start feeling that I am essentially damaged, and broken and sick and sinful and dirty, that is the greatest victory for Satan. The greatest victory for the Yetzer Hara is not just that I have sin that I need to do tshuva, that it becomes me. That I own it to the point that that is me. And we all know it's that subtle feeling where you just can't extricate yourself from that shame that penetrates your essence. And then the whole relationship with God is so contaminated. It's so like negative. It's so like ichi. Of course I want to get out of the season. But when you start Selichos b'matzai menucha, when you can really tap into a menucha, to a place of real serenity. Why are you serene? Why are you so relaxed? B'matzai menucha kidam menucha tchila. Because you can actually tune in the fact that in your real core, even if nobody ever told this to you, but it's true, you are the divine manifestation in this world. That's what you are. Whereas the Tanya says you're a chelik elikam imal mamish, you're a derivative of infinite consciousness. Now, from that perspective, that's the baseline. Now we begin a journey. I have a blemish. Okay, let's deal with it. First of all, I could be objective. You know why? I don't have to get defensive. If the blemish is me, then I get very defensive. Because when you're pointing out the blemish, you're actually delegitimizing me. That's dangerous. Of course I become defensive. Of course I can't be objective. Of course I'm going to counterattack. Right? Only when you can recognize a goodness that's much deeper than that, then you could say, okay, so somebody told me that there's a stain on my kapota. Okay, so clean it out. Somebody said your shirt is dirty. Okay, I have other shirts. I have other shirts. It's not an attack on my essence. Why do people become defensive? They become so defensive because you're attacking me. You want to kill me. Of course I have to defend myself. Of course I can't even go there. Either I get angry, I have to fight back. It's fight, it's flight, it's freeze, it's fawn, but it's a very urgent response of self-defense. Somebody punches you in the gut, of course you should be defensive. Don't be objective. Either run or fight, or at least freeze, die, call the Chaver Kaddish or whatever. But detach, it's serious stuff. Only when it's b'matzai menucha. B'matzai menucha, now it's a whole different experience. Now on the contrary, when you recognize how good you are, how powerful, how amazing you are, I don't want to have these blemishes. Why should I even have part of my life in which I'm stuck, in which I'm numb, in which I go down rabbit holes? It's so below me, you know. You could go to the smorgasbord and eat the most beautiful meal. Why should you go to the garbage? Why should you go to the garbage and look for some meat on bones and hang out over there? When you're so rich, when you're so grand, when you're so exquisite, why do I need to reduce myself to such pettiness and smallness? It's a different type of slichus. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin of Samachet, it's also in Medrash, that Turnus Rufus was the Roman governor in Judea in the time of Rabbi Akiva. And he used to debate Rabbi Akiva a lot. So he asked Rabbi Akiva, Ma yoimi yomayim. Why is Shabbos different than other ones? And they had to hold it. Rabbi Akiva told him about Shabbos, Sambatyon yochiach. The river of Sambatyon will prove Shabbos. So Rashi explains, and the Medrash says that the river of Sambatyon, a whole week, 6 days, it hurls rocks. So it's like it hurls rocks, so nobody can go through. And Shabbos, it's noch. Shabbos, no, it doesn't throw rocks. You can go through the Nar Sambatyon. That's what. So Sambatyon is a physical testimony for Shabbos in the physical world. What's the message here? What's the message? In the middle of the week, if Slichus starts in the middle of the week, you feel like somebody's throwing rocks at you. And if somebody's throwing rocks at you nonstop, of course you can't be calm. How could you be calm? And what if life is throwing rocks at you? And what if God is throwing rocks at you? And what if your wife is throwing rocks at you? And your kids are throwing rocks? And the shviger and the shver. And everybody's throwing rocks at you. How could you calm down? Well, what do you want me to calm down? And then you start throwing rocks at yourself. And those are the strongest, most powerful rocks. Shabbos, nobody's throwing rocks at you. When nobody throws rocks at you, you don't have to be defensive. If somebody's throwing rocks at me right now, I'm going to be defensive. Sorry. I'm not going to throw another one. Here's the second sheet. You don't do that. If you're a healthy person, either run or you have to defend yourself. That's why we're defensive. Shabbos is Motzai Menucha. When I could look at the blemish from a place of serenity. Nobody's throwing rocks at you. They actually love you. Energetically, when you could make this shift emotionally, your marriage will change. Your relationship with yourself will change. It's one of the hardest shifts for people to make, especially in our days. We could talk about things, but energetically, you relate to what I'm saying? Energetically, in a very, very deep place, there's such an enmeshment and entanglement. And even when we hear beautiful words, you're a chelik ma, all these nice things, but that's all lectures. It's all in the books. But push comes to shove. Internally, my nervous system is like, when is the next rock being hurled at me? That's the only question. And we're hypervigilant, and we're ready for it. We're like, okay, here we go. It's a posture of self-defense. And in a posture of self-defense, there's no co-regulation. There's no tranquility. There's no relationships that are not transactional. It's like transactional. You do this, I do this, you do this. Because I can't really relax. I can't let go. And the truth is, especially if in my youth, I had to be vigilant because nobody taught me what it means to be completely regulated. My nervous system doesn't even know what this looks like. So now when Rosh Hashanah comes, Yom Kippur comes, oh my God, you better be tense. And very internally, it's a very, very deep shift that comes from a radical re-experience of your nervous system as being holy, beautiful, sacred, as deserving of infinite love because you are really a manifestation of God in the world. That's what you are. There are things that attach themselves to us and they can become very entrenched. And because they become very entrenched, I want to deal with them. But what am I dealing with? I'm dealing with something that's not essentially who I am. The enmeshment can be so deep, it becomes, as somebody told me tonight, as tight as the skin to the flesh. The skin to the flesh is very, very tight, but it's not the same thing. It's called the epidermis. It's the skin. The skin to the bone, the skin to the bone. The skin to the bone, we know how tight it is. That's how deep the enmeshment can be. So b'Motzai Menucha, so Slichus is always Motzai Shabbos. Never on a Thursday and a Wednesday and a Thursday. The baseline of Slichus is Shabbos. You're holy. You're beautiful. You're sacred. You're divine. You're glorious. You're perfect. You're amazing. You're incredible. Now, V'lanu Boishas Aponim. Now I'm ashamed of the fact that I have to be so ashamed. I'm ashamed of the fact that I have to reduce my life to such smallness or pettiness or manipulation or exploitation. It's a part of me, but that this becomes who I am. I want to extricate myself from these blemishes, and that's the essence of tshuva, to return to that core, to return to that idea. There's a word that everyone said, it says in the beginning of Pesachim, Oir l'arba asar, boidkines hachametz lo'ir haneir. Right? But when it comes to the 14th of Nisan, you have to check chametz. All the holes, all the crevices. So the Gemara asks in the beginning of Pesachim, what does Oir mean? What's Oir l'arba asar? Oir means light. When is that? Is that the day? No, it's the night. And it goes a page and then another page, like a page and a half in Gemara to debate if Oir means the night or the day. Back and forth, proves. At the end, the Gemara proves that Oir means the night. The night of the 14th, we do B'dikas Chametz. We don't do it by day, we do it at night. Yeah? So here comes the big question. What do you have to write the word Oir? And then give me 2 pages back and forth with psukim and this. Yeah, no, it's very complicated over there. Why couldn't you just say the word Leil Arbos, the night of Arbos, Ben Chametz on there? Just say Leil. The Gemara says, Lashon Nekiya, Pesach Dvarecha Yoyer. You want to begin with the idea of Oir. Find another way of saying it clearly. The Rebbe said a gewaldige Wort. It's telling you everything here. B'dikas chametz is very important, but only if you start with Oir, if you start with light. If you start with light, if you start with the baseline is dark, don't start checking for the chametz. It's going to be a disaster. Because it's going to be confirmation bias. You're going to find chametz everywhere, constantly. The baseline is light. Now go check your chametz. It's a different b'dikas chametz. When you check chametz with a baseline of darkness versus a baseline of light, it's a completely different b'dikas chametz. You have to start with Oir. On Shabbos, we say the Gehenim closes down. There's no Gehenim. There's also halacha in Hilchas Shabbos, ain't done in b'Shabbos. You know, Bezdin was not allowed to judge on Shabbos. It's not just collectively, it's also individually. You don't judge yourself on Shabbos. Ain't done in b'Shabbos. The Gehenim is closed on Shabbos. Why not? Why shouldn't you judge yourself on Shabbos? Because the Shabbos is a space where, what are you judging? Who are you judging? Shabbos is the moment to get in touch with your eternity, with your divinity, with your cleanliness, with your holiness. Only when you learn the place where you don't judge yourself, you know how gloriously divine you are, now you could start saying Selichos. And with this, the Rebbe explained one more powerful nekuda. This Shabbos is called by Jews Shabbos Selichos. Shabbos Selichos. Why called Shabbos Selichos? It's an interesting name because whenever Shabbos has an extra name, it's always about something that's connected to Shabbos itself. For example, you have Shabbos Shuvah. On Shabbos, you say the Haftarah Shuvah Yisrael. Shabbos Chazayin, you say Chazayin Yeshayahu. Shabbos Nachamu, Nachamu, Nachamu. Shabbos Hagadol. It's a great miracle happened on that Shabbos. Shabbos Shira. You read the Shira. Every Shabbos is something that happens on Shabbos. The one exception, Shabbos Selichos. You don't say Selichos on Shabbos. Why is it called Shabbos Selichos? Because Mitzvah Shabbos you say Selichos. But one second, it's a funny thing. We have a halacha, you're not supposed to prepare from Shabbos to the weekday. Mechin Shabbos Lecha. Because Shabbos is the objective. Shabbos doesn't prepare for the weekdays. The weekdays prepare for Shabbos. Famous Rashi and Beitza with the Sudas of Shabbos are so chashuv, they need the preparation. The middle of the week is a preparation for Shabbos, not the other way around. Now here, the name Shabbos Selichos is not Mechin Shabbos Chama. You're packing your suitcase for Chah. But even conceptually, it's a problematic idea. That Shabbos is assuming a name of something that's going to be after Shabbos. Shabbos Selichos. So the Rebbe said, now we'll understand. No. Shabbos Selichos describes the Shabbos. The only way you could go into Selichos is because of Shabbos. It's not that Shabbos is a preparation for the Selichos. On Shabbos, that's the foundation of the Selichos. The Selichos is based on the Shabbos experience, on your wholeness, not on your brokenness. Selichos is not based on the fact that you're broken. It's based on the fact that you're whole. It's not based on the fact that you're evil. It's based on the fact that you're good. You're good. You're amazing. You're beautiful. That's what it's based on. That's what Selichos is based on. On a deeper level on Shabbos, there's also Selichos. But the Selichos of Shabbos is you find the place where you're not blemished. Over there, you don't need forgiveness because you're not blemished. You realize that all my blemishes are coming because I don't know my purity. I think I'm small. I think I'm a crook. I think I'm just in survival mode. I think I need to live with my coping mechanisms because without that, I'm going to melt. It's my smallness that causes me to react and to live from an impulsive, disintegrated, misaligned space. So Shabbos is slichus, but it's slichus from the place where you're unblemished. Now when you go into Mitzvah Shabbos and you sing Al Tira Avdi Yaakov because there is a fear Mitzvah Shabbos, because Shabbos Jews suffer from what's called PSS, post-Shabbos syndrome, which is why we smell besamim, etc., etc. So now you can go into the blemishes and say, with this baseline of Shabbos Lichis, now could be Mitzvah Menucha. That's why we say in the same piyut, what do we say? Tinufam mechena v'yodu filecho lishmoya larina ve'latfila. Tinufam. Tinuf, you know what tinuf is? Tinufam is their dirt, their filth. Mechena, erase. V'yodu filecha, let them acknowledge your wonder. That's the baseline. Mitzvah menucha. Tinufam mechena v'yodu filecha lishmoya el harina ve'latfila. And that's why it's not only tefillah, it's rina. Rina is praise. Rina is celebration. So that's the baseline. They say a vart. I heard it from Rebbe Melech Biderman in the name of the Rebbe Rashab. I didn't see it from the Rebbe, but he said in the name of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe of the fifth Lubavitcher, he said as follows. The Rebbe Rashab said, what's the difference between a rich person and a poor person? So you say one guy has money, one guy doesn't have money, but we all know it's not so simple. There are plenty of rich people, yeah? That lav dafka, they're having there's 3 lawsuits against them. Okay, there's 3 lawsuits against them. They're thinking about declaring bankruptcy. The liquid is completely abolished. Okay, but they're in shul and they hesa gvir. But in practicality, they don't have a lot. And then you have a poor person, right? He's been here a whole week and he's doing ganz fine. The pockets are filled up with money. So why is he called rich and he's called poor when in practicality he has money and he doesn't have money? Nonetheless, you won't change the title. The answer is because this person may be going to bankruptcy, there's 4 lawsuits against him, he has no liquid, but a haste, a gvir. I'm a rich man. Right now I have nothing mamish, but ich bin a gvir. Why? Because that's who I am. The other guy, he may have $5,000 in his pocket. Ich bin an araman. I'm be'etzem ashnara. It's not how much money you have. It's how you carry yourself. How you carry yourself. Yeah. That's what the Yetzer Hara wants. It's not negay if you have money, if you don't have money. He wants you to say, ich bin a schnorrer, I'm an araman, I'm essentially poor. Your pockets are filled. There's so many amazing things about you. I'm essentially a poverty-stricken individual. Yeah. The approach has to be b'matzai menucha. You're not a garnished. You're not a filthy lowlife. You're rich. You're full of richness. You told it to me. You heard it from Reb Chaim Kreisvit, the chief rabbi of Antwerp. He told it to him. It's a very deep story. He said that Chaim Kreisvit was born in Krakow in 1920. And he survived the war as a bocher. And he ultimately came to Israel and I think Chicago. And then he moved to Belgium. Became the Rav of Antwerpen. Chaim Kreisvit shared this. You told it to me, Rav Friedman. He heard it from him. So he said that when he was in Europe, it was 1940, right before he got out, an older Jew came over to him and said, I may not make it out from here. And I have a Swiss bank account with a lot of money. A lot. It's a pity that nobody should inherit the money. So I'm going to give you the information in order to retrieve the money from the account. And please, if you ever find an ear of mine or the closest relative, give them the information, let them get the Yerusha. It's a huge astronomical amount of money. I did very well. Fine. He took the information. Unfortunately, that Jew never made it out. Reb Chaim Kreisvit made it out. And life moves on, 25 years later, he was in Antwerp. And a Jew comes in after davening to collect money. Reb Chaim Kreisvit is rolling up his talis and tefillah. And this Jew comes over, and he looks at him, and he's not just poor. He's so poverty-stricken that you could see the man has nothing. And he starts talking to him. Where's your next meal? He says, I live from meal to meal. Basically, the money I collect here is going to support me for my next meal. He's always on the road. He's always traveling. No stability. He asks him for his name, and he tells him his name, and he has a flashback. It's the name of that Jew. But he doesn't feel that it's connected, but he feels maybe. So he takes his information. He doesn't want to say anything. And he asks him if he's going to be around for a few days. He says, yeah. And afterwards, he starts doing research. And his research is telling him that there is a connection. So after a few days, when he's almost sure, he starts speaking to this Jew. And without divulging why he's asking him all these questions, he really does a thorough investigation to really be able to hone in on the details until he comes to the conclusion that this is the son. He is not just a relative, he's the son of this person. So Reb Chaim Kreisvit calls him over and says, Rabbi, I want to tell you something. Du bist nicht kein anderer Mann. Du bist Gott a großer Gewinn. You're not a poor man, you're very, very rich. So he says, well, you're laughing for me. Lo yeglarosh, well, you're laughing for me. He gives him money, and he says, listen, I want you to buy a train ticket, and I want you to go to Basel. From Antwerp, go to Basel, and go to this and this bank, and here is the information, and retrieve the money that belongs to you. He thought Reb Chaim Kreisvit was completely insane. But he took the information, he has the money for a train ride, and he went to retrieve it. Reb Chaim Kreisvit said, at that moment, I realized something. In his perspective, he was one of the poorest people on the universe. In the truth, he was one of the richest Jews alive. Or certainly extremely, extremely rich. But he didn't know it. He didn't know it. And that duality was so powerful. And this is exactly the emotional truth of so many people. We have learned over a long, long gullus and a long, long history, and everybody's own history, that we are essentially so broke, so downtrodden, so guilty, so filthy. And if that's the baseline, the whole Selichos, the whole Rosh Hashanah, the whole Yom Kippur, I hate to say this, can be such a rotten experience. It's always like I have to justify my existence, and maybe I'll find Hashem in a good mood for a few moments, and He won't get angry at me, and I'll say the right thing, and I'll make the right Kabbalah, and I'll make the right resolution, and maybe, Ula Yerachem, and maybe He'll find some spark, Oid Ma'at, Bezois Yover, Yaron Al HaKodesh, Bepar, for the Breslover, Reish Pei Beis, Oid Ma'at. You have to know the Likutei Maharam for that. But the truth is, it's mamash the other way around. It's really the other way around. It's the baseline is your richness is infinite. That's the real baseline. Now we all know we have blemishes. We have things that attach themselves to us. The skin is holding tight to the bone and doesn't want to let go of that enmeshment. It doesn't want to let go. If you can even for 3 minutes experience this part of you, and if you ever had that experience, you know what it is. You know, once you have touched it, it's unmistakable. It's like you have heard your real music. It's like, wow, I'm actually good. I'm actually innocent. I'm actually pure. Everything is different. Everything is different. I can be so rich and completely ignorant of it. That's the secret of b'maitzai menucha kidam nucha tchila hat aznecha mimarim yoshev tehila lishmoya el harina vel atfila l'chaim 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 l'chaim. Yeah. Verstanden? Ze hebben zich zu de Sicha. Thank you. V'yoytzarecha atoy v'lanu siftach. Sharei shamayim pesach mibani. Sharei shamayim pesach lanu siftach v'yoytzarcha atoy v'lanu siftach. Sharei shamayim pesach shior hachaim doif kekanim v'dalim zolkon lach sham kshaif v'shulchan me'olim ki etor av selichos shamayim pesach v'yoytzarecha atoy lanu siftach v'yoytzarecha atoy lanu siftach. Shamayim pesach sharei shamayim pesach lanu siftach v'yoytzarcha atoy v'lanu siftach. Sharei shamayim Somehow when you sing a niggin, the niggin says everything that you want to say, you know? It says it much better than words, right? I don't want to ruin it with the words. They say from Reb Nachman of Breslov, what's the difference between a speech and a song? If somebody is speaking, if I'm giving a speech and somebody starts speaking in the middle of my speech, I call it interruption. But if I'm singing a song and somebody starts singing a song in the middle of my singing, we call it harmony. So there's two types of people that live. There are people who are always talking. Look who's talking. And there are people who are always singing. It's a choice. If you're always talking, everybody is always interrupting you, especially your family members, because they're around you most. If you learn how to stop talking and start singing, everybody is harmonizing with you. So that's the secret, my dear friends. Stop talking and start singing. I would add, there are those that even when they sing, they're still talking. And there are those that even when they talk, they're singing. That's Pshat Hashem Svosai Tiftach Ufi Yaget Hilasecha. So the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya teaches Gewaldik. And look at the Torah. Hashem Svosai Tiftach. You open my lips. Ufi Yaget Hilasecha. My mouth will channel your praise. In other words, I'm not doing the talking. Yagit from the word Gidim. Gidim are the blood arteries through which the blood flows. Ufi Yagid. My fi wants to be like a gid, like a channel, like an artery. Tehila Secha, for your praise, I'm just going to open my mouth and say whatever you want to say. You could use me as a mouthpiece. By the way, those shiurim come out the best. If God wants. If he doesn't want to use me as a mouthpiece, I got to figure out what to say on my own, and then whatever. It's a disaster. Somebody gets insulted, or whatever it is. But if it's a fi yagete lasecha, there's no self-consciousness. The mic, you think the mic is self-conscious? The mic is not self-conscious. Well, what happens this? The mic is a mic. When you become a mic, you lose your self-consciousnse. Let Hashem speak and be the mic. That's prat la'adam marchelev. Le'adam marchelev. Umei Hashem Manei Lashay Na ya Hashem Yitoifus Svasai Tiftawach Ufi Yagi Tihilasach Ma Hashem Meine Loshen. So what can I do? Just show up. Get out of the way. La'adam marchelev. Just bring your heart. Just open your heart. Marchelev means you prepare the heart. For that, we have to, it's the easiest thing, but it's the hardest thing. Emes Reb Avram is the easiest thing, but it's also the hardest thing. It's the easiest thing because it's like going out of space. Once you're out of space, there's no gravity. But to get out of space is a shtickle avoida, yeah? You have to get into a spaceship. You have to train a little bit. But how long does it take to get out of space? Shaita chada, how long does it take? How long does it take to get out of space in a spaceship? 6 seconds? 30 seconds. That's tshuva. B'shaita chada. Just get out of space and then you're floating. But to get out of space, it's like let not the gravity control. Get out of space. The ego doesn't have control anymore. There's no gravity, and then you soar. Me'ashem ma'in Eloshim. There's a gewaldige word from the Maggid of Mezrich. What's a shofar? Why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Right? It's an amazing idea, he says. What's the shofar? So he says a shofar, every musical instrument, the musical instrument creates the music. Piano, gewaldig, the violin, the cello, the harp, the guitar, the drum. Every musical instrument with its own unique flavor and ingredient. The shofar is different. The shofar is not creating the sound. Who creates the sound? The blower of the shofar. So what do you need a shofar for? So blow. Do. It'll be easier. It'll be simpler. Everybody will hear. Because the shofar is the instrument that when you take the shofar and you blow it through the narrow sound, min hameitzar karasika, oh no, niba merchavka, and you blow the sound from your mouth, and it goes through the shofar. It comes out from the other side with a resonance that the shofar gives it its unique flavor and ingredient. If I would just go tu, it has a different flavor. So the Maggid of Mezrich says that that's what life is. The person is a shofar. What's the main avoid of the shofar? I don't create a sound. All I need to do is hollow out. If the shofar has in it what is it called? Marrow. Because when you take off the ram's horn, it's full of marrow. It's not hollow. You need to hollow it out before Rosh Hashanah. You hollow it out and then you blow. Beautiful. So in life, the greatest moment in life is when you become a shofar. A shofar means I'm a channel. I'm a conduit. A conduit. And by the way, when you're a conduit, you can do it. If you're not a conduit, I could do this, I can't do this, I can't do that. When you're a conduit, you can do it. Because you're just a conduit. Just show up. You're not doing it, don't worry. You can do it because you're not doing it. Just show up. But show up with an open heart. Show up with a hollow shofar, without ego, without self-consciousness. The Maggid says, in the Haftarah of Yom Kippur, it's Yeshayahu Perik Nun Ches. So Hashem tells Yeshaya Hanavi, Harem kashoifar kailecha. I want you to raise your voice like a shofar and tell my people about their sins. Haged lebeis Yaakov, tell the house of Jacob about all of their sins and their chatoyos. So the Maggid is, why like a shofar? There could be a lot of instruments, or just say Harem kailecha, raise your voice. Why like a shofar? So he says Hashem is telling Yeshaya Hanavi something very deep. If you want to be able to communicate to people, especially if you want to talk about their blemishes, you need to be a shofar. If they're going to feel your ego, they will never ever listen. If you want to speak to people and raise their consciousness, you need to be a shofar. Harem ka shofar kelecha. What's a shofar? A shofar is nothing is coming from the shofar. Nothing. It's just a channel. When you criticize somebody, especially your child, if you're not a shofar, is it going to backfire? Because they feel the insecurity. The moment I feel the ego, I become defensive. You're throwing rocks, I start throwing rocks. Sambatyan yechiach. Go back to Sambatyan. Shabbos, get rid of the rocks. Harim kashoifer kelecha. Hashem svasai tiftachu fiyagid elazach. That means you communicate from a place where you don't have to take control, where you can completely let go. It's one of the hardest things in the world because we like to control because we want to stay safe, small, and in control. But once you free that up, it's gewaldig. And there's something else about the shofar. If you ever noticed, if you ever tried to think, let me blow from the broad side of the shofar. Why do I have to be a narrow type of guy? Why should I be parochial? I want to be broad. Harchova. So take the broad side of the shofar and start blowing. You know what it's going to sound like? You could try it out. I've tried it. I don't know if there's a shofar here, but if there's a shofar here, I could visualize it for you. But you could try it at home. You have a shofar? Okay, gewaldig. Gewaldig, I forgot. Shine Altz's door. There's Shatnez, there's a cipher, there's a restaurant, whatever you want. Look at this. This is garnished, right? Mamish garnished, right? Even though this is the guy, like he's broad, he's expansive consciousness. Not everybody's into expansive consciousness. You go to this little guy, right? And I'm not a professional Baltikeya. Imagine a professional who's mamish glat kosher. So you have two types of Jews. You have Jews that say, we're universal, we're expansive, we're not parochial, we are citizens of the world. We only blow from the broad side. We're not domesticated, we're not like, narrow-minded. And that's where they want to blow from. And what happens? There's no voice. There's no distinct voice. When you're not anchored in your uniqueness, in your truth, in your faith, in your history, nobody has what to hear. You're not selling anything. You're just looking, what's the last op-ed page opinion in the New York Times or CNN? That's what you're repeating. You just need to fit into the world. There's nothing, you're not saying anything. But when you go back to your own anchor, when you go back to your unique essence, you're a Jew, then there's a voice, the whole world will hear it. The whole world will respect it. Right? The generations of Jews being so embarrassed and apologetic for their existence and apologetic for every move. Nobody respects you. Stop being so broad. Be real. Be authentic. It's also true in our own life, psychologically, emotionally. People who are constantly trying to please everybody. You want to make everybody happy. I'm the guy that makes everybody happy. Right? I'm broad. I'm not narrow. I'm not parochial. I'm here for everybody. I'm the quintessential people's pleaser. On my tombstone, they're going to write that. The quintessential people's pleaser. Everybody liked him. There's nothing that you're not giving anything. You're not giving anything. Be a man. Be you. Min hametzar. Be you. Be anchored in your soul, in your distinctiveness. Be present. Be present with your energy. Be alive with your energy. Don't try to, what's your energy? Let me copy you. Oh, now I copy you. Now I copy you. Now I copy you. The main thing is, I'm spineless and everybody is satisfied. Harem kashoifer kelecha. Harem kashoifer kelecha. That's the idea. The shoifer kelecha. So the Maggid says that's what Hashem told Yeshaya. Especially if you're going to say Musar, make sure that people feel egolessness, because then they won't be defensive. The moment they start feeling it's me versus you, everybody shuts down. They shut down. People want to know why their kids shut down when they talk. Because your kids feel your insecurity. Other people don't, but your kids know how insecure you are. They know how much fear you have. They know how overwhelmed you are. They know how much anxiety you have. So they shut down. So if you want to help your children, help yourself. Become a shofar. Start dancing with your soul. Start dancing with your spouse. And then when you talk, they won't feel that it's coming from fear and pressure. It's coming from celebration. In fact, it's coming from a place where Tati and Mami are doing amazingly well. Not because we don't have empathy, but because we're not defined, we're not putting on you the pressure to make us happy. One of the hardest things for children is the pressure that they're responsible for their parents' happiness. You remember when you felt that about your parents? If I would only be a good boy, my father would rage less. My mother would be more whatever. Finish the sentence that belongs to your house. The pressure on kids that they have to make their parents happy is overwhelming. It's hard enough to be happy yourself. Now I have to make my father, who has a lot of issues, happy, and now I'm responsible for my mother. Good luck. Till after let's hope by Tchiyas HaMesim she'll be happy. I mean, God willing, Bakar of Mamash. The guys are laughing too much for this. I don't know why, but fine, I'm not your psychoanalyst. I'm not going to go there at the moment. But you're having too much of a good time here with my humor. The bottom line is, don't put this pressure on your children. Be happy because you're human, because you're Jewish. Take that pressure off of them. I don't need you to be like this so that Tati shouldn't be a miserable man. Wow, really? You know what happens? They can actually look at themselves, see themselves, and actually stop blaming you and projecting everything on you, and do their journey and do their work. This is the value of harem kashoifer kailecha. We hollow out. So daily avodah, become a shofar. Empty it out. Get rid of. If there's ego, fine. It's normal. We all have that. But we have to realize if I'm blowing from the ego, or I'm just being a shofar and I say, Ufi yaget yilasach. Hashem svasei tiftach ufi yaget yilasach. All the pressure is off. Self-consciousness is off. I know it's easier said than done. When it comes to physical shofar, it's not so hard. When it comes to an emotional shofar, it's transformational. You know the mice, I told it to you once, you know the mice with the schwitz? I'll tell you gewaldige mice, gewaldig. I heard the story from the Baal HaMaisa. And we actually have some of his nephews here. I was once at a wedding. It was in Morristown, New Jersey. And the Masada Kedushin was a Jew whose name was Rabbi Shalom Ber Gordon. We have some of his nephews from the Gordon family here. His brothers, Rebbe Nissan's children and grandchildren. And Reb Shalom Ber Gordon was a rabbi in New Jersey. In which city? In first Newark and then Maplewood. And we're sitting at the Kabbalah's Panim. It was a wedding of a girl named Greenberg who was marrying a cousin of mine. That's why I was there. And he made their parents Bali Tshuva back in the 60s or early 70s. So he was Masada Kedushin. He had cancer at the time. He was sick. And shortly after, he passed away. But we were sitting at the Kabbalah when I saw that he was frail and weak, but he was a very geschmacke Yid. So I asked him, this was around 2008 or 2007, close before he passed away. I asked him, how long has he been a rabbi? And he said 60 years or close to 60 years. I'm like, wow, 50 or 60 years, like a half a century. So I told him, so tell me just give me, the bottom line advice. Like, what do I have to live 60 years and figure out from all the mistakes? Just give it to me right now. So he says, I'll tell you a story. And when I experienced that story, I didn't have to hear anything else. In 1949, Tavshin Tes, he was invited to be the rabbi in the shul in New Jersey. This is 1949. You have to understand that orthodoxy in America was very different than today. It was very small. It was very, very challenging. Educational institutions you can count on two hands. No yeshivas, mamish nothing. And Yiddishkeit was very weak in America, extremely. The Reform conservative movements were much more powerful. And this was an Orthodox shul, and he took the shtella. And he started to speak. And the first week he spoke about Shabbos. And the president comes over to him afterwards and said, you realize that most Jews here drive on Shabbos, even though it's an Orthodox, so don't talk about this, you're insulting everybody. Okay. The next week he spoke about mikveh. And they're like, the president is like, that's not what we do. Talk about something else. Kashrus. No, we don't do that here. So finally he asked the guy, what should I talk about? He says, talk about Judaism. Talk about Judaism. Right? He didn't know what to do. Was he going to make a joke out of himself? So he went to consult the Rebbe Rayat, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose name I'm privileged to carry, Yosef Yitzchak, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who was the father-in-law of the Rebbe. He passed away Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud, 1950 in New York. So he went to consult the Rebbe Rayatz. This was the last year of his life, of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's life. You probably saw some pictures or videos. He was like, you could see from his eyes, a malach alekim, and he was half paralyzed. He was he suffered terribly. In the Soviet Union, he suffered. And then other things, from his middle bottom, he was paralyzed. And it was hard for him to talk also. It was hard to understand him. But he went in on Yechidus. He told this to me, Rabbi Gordon. And he presented the question to the Rebbe Rayatz, to the Rebbe Yosef, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, I have a challenge. Because if I tell them what I want to tell them, they're going to fire me. If I tell them what they want to hear, I'm not doing my job. I'm just selling my soul to please them. What am I supposed to do? It's like a catch-22. You're stuck between, what is it called, a rock and a hard ball. You say the truth, they throw you out. You don't say the truth, you throw yourself out, right? You feel like you're denigrating yourself. You don't forgive yourself. So what do? Do you sell your soul for the sake of the people, right? Or do you not sell your soul and then you have no people? You go looking for a job. A big question, 1949, how to deal with the shul, the congregation. So he tells me, he says, the Rebbe looks at me and says, Reb Shalom Ber, have you ever been, bist amol gewen in Auschwitz? Did you ever go to Auschwitz? Auschwitz is a sauna. In those days, in America, it's coming back slowly, the Schwitz was like a very Jewish religion. It was like the essence of the Jewish religion. You went to the Schwitz, you ate nuts, and you analyzed Harry Truman, and Eisenhower, and Roosevelt, and you decided the Korean War. That's where Jews ran the world. There's still some Jews here in Muncie. They go to the Schwitz, and from the Schwitz, they run the whole world. Everything they run. They decide everything. It's all in the Schwitz. This was a strange question to get from the Rebbe. Have you ever been to the Schwitz? He says, yeah. So the Rebbe says, can you describe to me what happens at the Schwitz? Now he really felt uncomfortable. It's not, it's not mamish, whatever. We know what happens in the Schwitz. What is he going to start? But the Rebbe asked him, so he starts saying. And he says, people come and it's a room and they don't have their clothes on and it's very hot and they enjoy it and they sit and they converse. And the Rebbe says, what happens afterwards? He says, after they get used to it, they go up a few levels, a few steps, and it's even hotter and hotter and hotter. And then what happens afterwards? He says, afterwards, they used to have in the Schwitz, it was called a beder, with a broom. They had bezime. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they used to have in the Schwitz brooms. And when you're really hot, you ask the guy, the attendant in charge, the gabbai, to take the Schwitz broom and whip you on your back. And the Rebbe says, what happens when he whips you? He says, geschmack, and you ask him to do it more and more. It's a good feeling when your back is burning hot, glowing red, and he's hacking you with this bezim, with this broom. It's very geschmack. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Deatz, looks at him and says, I have a question. If this person would come to you in the middle of the street with a broom and start whipping you on your back, what would you do? So he says, either I would run away, or I would hit him back, or I would call the police. So why in the Schwitz do you ask him to do it? So at this point, he told me I was smart enough to be quiet. I said, it's a Schwitz. He says, no. So the Rebbe looked at him and said, I'll explain to you why. If he comes over in the street with a bosom, with a bezim, with a broom and starts whipping you, you're going to counterattack or run away. In the Schwitz, he doesn't just start hitting you. First, he makes sure that you're warmed up. Then he makes sure that you're elevated. You go higher. Once you're hot and you're elevated, now he takes out the broom and he starts whipping you. And what do you say? Mer, mer, mer. Give me more, give me more. He looked at him and he said, if you go stand up in your shul with a broom and you start whipping the community, they'll throw you out. Turn your shul into a Schwitz. Varem zeyon und heb zeyuf. Warm them up and elevate them. Then take out the broom. And then, you know what they're going to say? Mer, 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 more, more, more. He looked at me and he said, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, 60 years, I didn't have to hear another piece of advice. It was the only piece of advice I needed to hear for my entire career. And by the way, you should know the results of that, because he affected so many people. And whenever you take out an art scroll, Gemara or Chumash or anything, and you thank Rabbi Nosson Sherman, who's the main editor of Art Scroll, that's one of the products of Rabbi Gordon, because he was a young kid in New Jersey, and he sent him to yeshiva. So the whole Art Scroll revolution is from the Schwitz that the Rebbe Ayatz told him to do. Every time you take out a Gemara and you're learning Meseches Hoyriyos, Meseches Zvachim, it's all from that Schwitz. That's the impact of one shliach, one Jew who's a channel, who's a shofar, and you don't realize the impact. He sent him to yeshiva, Torah Vadas, I believe, and he became who he became, and became part of a tremendous Havatzas HaTorah. What does this tell us? This tells us, don't take out the broom in your house or anywhere else if it's not a Schwitz. Make sure it's a Schwitz. A Schwitz means it's warm. Warm them up. Fire them up. You come out with a broom, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Leave me alone. Go to therapy and deal with your issues. You're an angry person, you have anxiety, stop blaming God, and I know Rosh Hashanah you freak out, so call Hatzalah, go do cardiac arrest somewhere else. Do me a favor. Leave me alone. I'm being dramatic a little, but you all know there's a little truth here. You know how you felt about some other people in your life. Yeah, but did this, but did this, but did this. Whoa, 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 whoa. If you had a deep, intimate, blissful relationship with God, can you go to that space and enjoy it and stay there and let them just look at you? People feel energy. Everybody feels energy. People know what is safe and what's not safe. Everybody knows. We could make believe we don't know. Everybody knows. You know when you're in a place of safety and you can let go. And when somebody's throwing rocks on the Shabbat, you can't let it go. Rabbi Akiva said, Shabbos, you don't need rocks. And if you bring in Shabbos a whole week, you don't need the rocks. Shabbat in Yechiach. Don't change other people. The only person you'll ever change in your entire life is yourself. And even yourself, you won't really be able to change. You'll only be able to open yourself up to who you really are. If you think you have to change yourself, it's not going to happen. You don't change. You open yourself up to who you always were, who you always will be, but some blockages came in the middle. Turn your home and your shul and your school and wherever you are into a schwitz. Make sure that people feel warm. In warmth, there's safety. When there's safety, I can relax my guards. I don't have to be defensive. I can have a conversation with you in which you feel my heart and I feel your heart, and I don't have to be vigilant. I don't have to attack you. You don't have to attack me. We could both it's not transactional. It's not points. And you know what happens? You can do that with God. And the moment you do that with God, it's like, bruchim aboyim. I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. We're one. We're always one. We're always one. We're indivisible. Chelek, mamish one. Chelek Hashem. And everybody around you will feel it. Everybody. Now it's easy to go, but you're this, and you're this, and you're this. Make a schwitz, he said, stop it. Make this a fiery, warm place. And not enough. Elevate them. In a schwitz, you go higher and higher and higher. Now take out the broom. And you know what happens? The Rebbe said, give me more. Why? Because people want to get better. And I want to say something. I don't know who's listening to this. I don't know everybody who's in this room. I know some people in this room. I don't know everybody in this room. I certainly don't know who's listening. I do know that there's a lot of sick people. What I mean by sick is the trauma of Gullus has been long. And this has been a difficult year. And it's been a difficult exile. And Hitler's long hand is still present. And people are still very sick, without judgment. And people really want to heal, but they don't really think they could. Narcissistic personality disorder. It's your pain. Nobody ever saw you, so now everybody has to see you for eternity. Borderline personality disorder. All different forms of personality, depression, anxiety, even pedophilia, the deviance in people's lives. Many of us have become sick. We've become sick. Whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's complete shutdown of emotions, complete disassociation. You think you could talk to God if you're emotionally disassociated from your wife and from your children? It doesn't work that way. If I shut the water in my house, there's no water. I can't suddenly, for the shower, there's water. If you shut your emotions down, there's no emotions for anything. It was a survival tool. It was a coping mechanism. People had to shut down their emotions. We get it. We created simulated emotions, matrix, artificial intelligence. We're amazing at that. Artificial intelligence. And this is a generation where God says it's time for redemption. It's time for healing. But so many people don't. There's such a despair deep, deep down. So we continue. So many divorces that are happening now. People are not ready to face their crazy trauma. I could blame my wife my entire life. I could blame my husband my entire life. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. But if you can really deal with your stuff, everything around you changes. But it's hard. It's hard. Coping mechanism says don't look at your pain and don't let anybody else see it. And the moment somebody brings it up, just throw rocks at them. And we completely disassociate and disconnect because we're in such defensive modalities. And the truth is, there is a different way. God has granted this generation with gifts of healing. And people should take advantage of it. There is hope. There is real, real hope. I am deep in the thicket of this reality, and I could tell you from my own life, I could tell you from other people's lives, there is tremendous potentiality for transformation, because deep, deep down, you know you want it. You don't have to live a tortured life. You don't have to have a miserable marriage. You don't have to be disassociated. You don't have to be shut down. We have learned to do that. And what's worse, we learned to call sickness health. Many of us learn to be sick and we call it healthy because it works. As my wife likes to tell me, it works until it doesn't. So for those of you who are lucky enough that it stopped working, you should know that there's another path. And for those of you who still think it works, the train is moving, and God has expedited consciousness very, very heavily the last era. Like consciousness is on steer. He expedited consciousness. Like, you know, you want to be a turtle, you could be a turtle. But like, wake up and smell the coffee. This world is moving fast. This world is moving fast. Somebody said in Shul today, you told me, right, that somebody asked Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, really from the true Chassidium Masa'olam of our generation. So somebody asked him, how do you want to be remembered after you die? So he looked at the guy like he's crazy, like 31 years old, you know. What are you writing my obituary? Like he wasn't planning on this. And finally the person pushed him and he said, I want to be remembered for my courage and my faith. I want to be remembered for my courage and my faith. And he will be remembered for those two things. And I thought, you know, we need, everything is a lesson. We need courage and we need faith. When you have courage, the faith has where to go. And when you have faith, you can have courage. Courage and faith. Courage that Torah is true, that God is real, that there's goodness, that you weren't created just to survive and exploit the world. Like, you're rich. You could do much better. You could do much better than shutting down and being on autopilot. We can all do much better. And this is without judgment, because most of our coping mechanisms is simply survival. Everybody was just trying to survive. And you know what? They did an amazing job. We're all here. We're here to tell the story. We are here to tell the story after 3,500 years. Not so bad. Okay, we're here, we're singing, we're present. But comes a time of Geula, God says, I don't just want you to be here physically. I want you to be here. Come into my schwitz. I just realized, as we were singing all those songs, I realized that we keep on talking in Selichos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, about all of our shame. And then I realized, wow, so I used to think, like, leave me alone already with shame. I have enough shame inside. I don't need Selichos to tell me about my shame. Everybody has so much shame. And then I realized, wow, somebody once told me, a mentor of mine said, when your nervous system is safe, it can go into dark places. When your nervous system is not safe, it doesn't go into dark places. Our sages were not afraid to keep on talking about shame because their nervous system felt safe with God. That's why they weren't afraid. When your nervous system feels safe with God, give me the broom. Mer. Bring on the shame. I want to heal. Bring it on. I don't have to be mediocre. When my nervous system is not safe, you know, they say kids in orphanages don't cry. They don't cry. And they never say, Mommy, I hate you. In your house, they say, Mommy, I hate you. You're not my mommy. I'm never talking to you again. You know why? Because they're safe. They know Mommy ain't going anywhere. She went out 5 minutes, she's coming right back. She anyway feels guilty 24/7. She's a Jewish mother. She's not going anywhere, trust me. In the orphanage, they don't feel so guilty. You don't say, you're not my mommy anymore, because maybe you won't have a mommy. In your house, nobody's afraid to give you an attitude. They gave you an attitude. When your nervous system is safe, you can go to these places. You can go to dark places. When it's not, I have to be like this. The reason so many of the prayers deal with it is because they wanted to clean it out. They're not afraid of cleaning it out. Clean it all out. Clean it out. Clean it out. Don't be afraid. Bring on the broom. But only if there's a schwitz. Only if there's a schwitz. So that's the whole pshat in the Sikha. We spoke Motzai Menucha. Shabbos is a schwitz, right? It's warmth. That's what Shabbos is. It's a fire. Fire of Shabbos. Ka echsoif. Noyam Shabbos. Yerav lo yedidei sechem. And noifes suvach al tam. Once there's a schwitz, now bring it on. Bring it on. Everybody wants to hear the truth. Who doesn't want to hear the truth? But I want to hear the truth from somebody who loves me, from somebody who forgives me, and from somebody who knows me, not from somebody who's just busy protecting themselves from their insecurity. I didn't expect all of this to come out, but and hopefully I'm a shofar. We'll see how it impacts. If it impacts, I know I was a shofar. If not, okay. I got to deal with my own stuff. Nu hab's a Geschmack in Nigen. Rachamana Dani. Rachamana Dani. Rabbi Ephraim Waxman Shlita told me a story. I mean, it's a parable, but it left a deep impression. Once a Jew who owned a zoo. You already know where this is going, right? And one year, the leopard died, and the other leopard died. And to get a leopard from Africa would cost him too much. So he hired 2 Jews to dress up as leopards. They had to be athletic. They had to be flexible. They had to be able to enjoy attention. And they had to be able to deceive the world that they're leopards. And he got the right skin, the right uniform, and they dressed up as leopards. And he put them in the cages. And they got a very good salary. At night, they could become human. But during the day, they were leopards. They growled as leopards, and they screamed as leopards, and they fought as leopards, and they ran as leopards, and they jumped as leopards. And the tourists loved it. The visitors to the zoo, this was a huge attraction. They were athletic. They enjoyed the attention. And they really became quintessential leopards. You know, usually you go to the zoo, if you're lucky, the leopards wake up and look at you for a second. But they were active, amachaya. It brought in so much business and so much revenue. Everybody was happy. One fellow, a Gentile, enjoyed these leopards so much, he came constantly. He came constantly back and back and back to be able to see these leopards. Anyway, he became such a frequent visitor, and he enjoyed it so much. And one day, he was just sticking around. And it already became evening, and one of the leopards didn't realize that this guy was still there. So he thought everybody was gone. He didn't realize this guy was so addicted and so attracted to the leopards. He was still there at the last moments when the zoo was already closing. The leopards didn't realize. He couldn't contain himself. And he says, Yankel, was tut sich? Yankel, was tut sich? What do you say? So when I get to talk, it was a good day today, Yankel. This Gentile can't believe what he hears. Yankel, was tut sich? Yiddish he didn't understand. But he knew this is not the language of leopards. Yankel was tut sich, so when I get to talk, so when ba'atzluche, bald wird kommen Geld, the money is coming. He runs to the owner and he says, you're a thief, you're a thug, you're a liar, you're a deceiver. He says, what happened? They're not leopards, they're humans. No, what are you talking about, Meshugana, you are? So how do you know they're humans? I heard him talk. And the other guy answered. I heard him talk. He says, whoa. How long have you been here already in the zoo with these guys? He says, a year. A year you heard them talk? He says, no. So he says, once you spoke, they heard you speak, you heard them speak, and you decided based on that they're leopards? I mean, come on. A whole year you didn't hear a word. Once they made a mistake, and they spoke, that makes them leopards? Huh? That makes them humans? Sorry. That makes them humans? Come on. Yeah. That's the end of the story. But of course he was right. Why? Because to prove to me that you're not a leopard, I don't need you to speak a whole year. I need you to speak once. A leopard doesn't speak once a year. Or once in 10 years. To prove that you're not a leopard, I don't need you here to speak even more than 2 sentences. 1 sentence is enough. 1 Yankel was tutzich is enough. Because a leopard can't even say that line. With people, it's so interesting. We define ourselves based on our lowest moments, rather based on our highest moments. If you were a real leopard, you couldn't even say a word once a year. And if you're a real leopard, you couldn't say a word once in 10 years. And yet, most people look at themselves and they say, I haven't said a word in a year, I must be a leopard. The fact that you could say a word once a year means you're always a human being. You may not be completely embodying that quality. When people look at themselves, they usually judge themselves based on their lowest moments. Can you start judging yourself based on your highest moments? Because that's who you are. If you were a real leopard, even once a year you couldn't say these words. If once a year you can experience something sublime, that's who you are. Now the question is, how do we bring that to the rest of the year? How do I stop dressing up as a leopard, getting rid of my masks, and being human? That's a good question. But you're not a leopard. So people say, yeah, but I'm filled with this issue and that issue. I got it. But once a year, there's a moment of clarity, there's a moment of bliss, there's a moment of wonder. Where did that come from? So you're not a leopard. You have a soul. I only feel it for 5 minutes. I got it. And Yankel and the leopard only spoke for 3 seconds. But that proves it. So instead of defining yourself based on your lowest moments, you really have to define yourself based on your highest moment. Because if you wouldn't be defined by that, there wouldn't be a potentiality. Where did it come from? If that's the moment that was there, that's who you are. Now, the question is how to integrate it. One of the famous prayers, tefillos, that we say Rosh Hashanah, Hayoim Haras Olam. In Musaf, after each time we blow Shofar, Hayoim Haras Olam, Hayoim Haras Olam, Hayoim Yamid Bawa Mishpat, Kol Yitzurei Olamim Ayim Kevonim. Right? Everybody knows that. If you look in an English machzor, what does Hayoim Haras Olam mean? Today is the birthday of the world. Hayoim, today, Haras is the birthday, Olam of the world. Asks Davud Raham, Rabbeinu David. Davud Raham was one of the Rishonim, and he wrote one of the first commentaries on davening. And he says, there's something that's off. Why? The term Haras Olam comes from Jeremiah, chapter 20, Yirmiyahu Perek Chaf. Yirmiyahu Hanavi was the prophet who saw the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. He wrote Eicha. And he cursed the day that he was born. And he says that I wish that the person who notified my father that my mother gave birth to me would have told him instead that Haras Olam Rachma, her womb remained eternally pregnant with me, meaning I was a stillborn. He was so sad. You know, we sometimes are under the impression that the greatest sages and prophets didn't deal with deep crises. But some of the greatest of the great asked God to die. Moshe Rabbeinu, Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi. I mean, some of the greatest of the great had to deal with very, very deep pain that they had to confront because of what they saw and what they experienced. So this wasn't simple. So he says, I wish somebody would have told my father, my mother is eternally pregnant with me, meaning I'm forever in the womb. I die in the womb. I die in utero. Haras Olam. Haras means pregnant. Olam forever. Rachma in the womb. I would have been a stillborn baby. Says Davud Raham, come the sages, and they completely manipulate the words. Haras means pregnant. They made it birth. Olam means forever. They made it the world. Hayoim Haras Olam doesn't mean the birthday of the world. It means today you're eternally pregnant. But that wouldn't sound very good. So they turned it into Haras Olam. He said, that's not fair. You took the source and you completely changed it. Haras doesn't mean born, it means pregnant. Hara, Vatar. Olam means forever, eternally pregnant. It was a curse, it wasn't a blessing. Interesting question of the Vodraham. One of the answers, my friends, open your hearts, is the sages weren't distorting anything. This was exactly their point. Their point was Hayoim Haras Olam has two paradoxical interpretations. And who is the one who decides which interpretation we're going to give it? Every person individually. It's like the story of that guy who would go from town to town and he answered all the questions and he always knew every answer. And then finally one young man said, you know what? I'm going to chop him, I'm going to catch him. And he looks at him and he says, my fist is closed and in this fist there's a butterfly. Is this butterfly dead or alive? And he knew here he's going to chop, he's going to catch him, because if he says it's dead, he'll open his hand and the butterfly will fly away. And if he says it's alive, he'll just crush the butterfly to death. And the sage looked at him and said, the answer to this question lay in your hand. Hayoim haras olam, you can interpret two ways. One way is eternally pregnant. One way is the birthday of the world. Friends, every person that I know is pregnant with tremendous potential. Who is not pregnant? There's physical pregnancy of a child, but there's pregnant with so much potential, creativity. How much life is there inside of you? It's fascinating. On Yom Kippur, you go to the Machzer. When the Kohen Gadol came out of the Holy of Holies, he said a tefillah ktsara, very short prayer. You know why? Shaloi lahavis es Yisrael, not to scare. If he would sit and daven for 3 hours, like my speeches, everybody would think he's dead, and it would be over. So he did a fast tefillah, a few minutes, a few seconds, so he could come out. Because he didn't want to forfeit the opportunity to daven when you come out of the Holy of Holies, but he did a tefillah ktsara. So you can understand that in that tefillah, in that prayer, he compressed the most important things. What does he ask for? So he asks for Shaloi Sadi Shilton Mebeis Yehuda. Jewish people shouldn't lose their sovereignty. Judea shouldn't lose it. Jews should be independent. They should have their own country, their own military, their own empire. He asks there should be rain. Without rain, everybody starves. People should have parnasa. And then he says, Shaloi Sapil Isha Pri Bitna. No woman should have a miscarriage. Now it's a beautiful prayer, but if you're doing that, why don't you ask for women who have infertility and people who are sick? There's so many different types of struggles in this world, but that's what he focuses on. But there's a very deep message here. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, everybody in their utero has something inside. We have children. The Gemara says in Saita, Toldoiseyem shel tzadikim masim toivim. My peirim mitzvahs. Ela told us noyach tzadik. How many people's dreams die in utero? We're so filled with potential, but how many of us surrender to quiet desperation? How many of us start believing that we were just born to survive? If I could finish the week and finish the month, already I'm above. I'm out of the red. But you weren't born just to survive. You were born to change the world. Al tigui b'meshichai elu tineikas shel beis Rabbi. The Gemara says Shabbos Kuf Yutes. Don't touch my anointed ones, my Mashiachs. Who are the Mashiachs? The little children. So Rabbi Adin Even Yisrael Adin Steindos once said, every little child, you remember when you were young, you had a dream, either you're going to be Mashiach or you're going to bring Mashiach. Every child has these dreams. But then we grow up, and we become a little cynical. Don't allow anybody to touch and contaminate the child inside of you. Don't allow anybody to contaminate the beautiful, innocent child inside of you. Never grow up fully. Always have that child inside of you, the innocence, the purity. Every person I know, there's so many dreams. People have so much potential. People have so much light. But so often, our internal power dies in utero. Haras olam. We remain eternally pregnant. We create things in our mind and then we just let them die. It's not to blame. It's not to judge. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of stuff to deal with. And people are so busy surviving, they could never learn who they really are and how much God needs them and wants them. Hayoim haras olam. Today I have to decide, is this going to be another year in which I'm going to be eternally pregnant? Or will this be the year when at last I will be born? Haras olam. The world will be born. I will be born. And through me, my world will be born. And the impact I can have in the world will be born. So the Kohen Gadol understood this is the quintessential prayer. You touch your Yechidah Shebenefesh, you go into the Holy of Holies, and you learn about yourself, but please don't allow any woman to have a miscarriage. Every Jew is the wife of Knesset, of Hashem. Leisapel Isha Pri Bitna. Don't allow any woman, any one of us, to miscarry. Physically, of course, but also emotionally. And and spiritually. So I want to bless you all, my dearest brothers and friends and holy souls, that this should be a year in which individually and collectively you should be able to say Haras Olam. I want to be able to be a shofar. I want to be able to light to come through me. I want to let go of all the enmeshment of all the I don't even know how to describe it, all the nauseating fake energy. Shagas, yeah, whatever it is. Not with rage, because that becomes part of it. With compassion, with empathy. Haras Olam. Allow yourself to be born. Allow yourself to be born. Allow your soul to emerge. We blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah because in the first Rosh Hashanah, God blew. What did he blow? Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. He blew a soul into Adam Arishan, which means he took a shofar and he blew it. Because Adam is the shofar. We said before, Adam's body and personality is shofar. And God took that shofar, he blew. So every Rosh Hashanah we re-experience Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. Here, blow it through me. Let me not block the sound. The worst thing you could do is take the shofar and go like this. God is like blowing and blowing and blowing. I'm like, sorry. I don't have time. Open your hands, open your hearts. Let it go through. Right, this is the era, Hayom Haras Olam. To be able to be born, and individually to be able to be born, and collectively to be able to be born. Ge'oin Yaakov, Yiddish Stolz. Be able to be born as a people. Hayom Hazeh Niyesa La'am. Today we're a people. To have that courage, to have that faith, to have that conviction, to have that unwavering confidence in the infinite divine light who entrusted you to become a channel for that light. L'chaim, a good gebenched yar, Shana Tova, Sukkah, Lanu, L'chol Beis Yisrael, especially for our soldiers, especially for the hostages, all of our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, and all of the leaders. They should be able to blow the shofar and not be afraid. To blow fully, b'chol ha'toikef, to the point that the blood, it says in halacha, yadimu pnei ha'toikeya, that the face of the toikeya becomes red because there's a flow of energy. Min ha'meitza karasi ya, anani b'merchav ya. It should be taka, a good gebenched yar, lanu l'chol beis Yisrael. And the main thing is a year of victory and a year of redemption. Internal redemption, geula pratis, and automatically geula klalas, collective redemption. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Die was dafür machen a bracha achroina, wollen sich machen a bracha achroina. We'll go for slichos.